welcome to another episode of the Growth Design Podcast. My name is Ini Oluwabiodun and I'm here with Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Ini. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Same here. I am so thrilled to be talking to you. And for our listeners, Rebecca is an incredible co-founder of a tool that I long admired from my business days. This tool is called Flodesk. And we will get into all the details of how Flodesk came to be and what led to, just like what was the pain points that led to creating this tool. But first of all, let me gush about it again. Let me gush about it. Like, I remember super early days of running my design agency and being incredibly frustrated that when it came to things as simple as email building, just from a designer's perspective, there were so many missing elements and you were sort of forced to use whatever the tool that is out there provides. I will not mention it. But the point was it became increasingly annoying. And you can also imagine when you're trying to, for example, send newsletter out to your community that you're building as a business owner, and you put together an email and you can't just beat your chest and say this was put together by a designer. That was the frustration. So enter Flodesk, and almost immediately it was love at first sight. Just being able to drag, drop, but also make the edits, have like custom fonts, and just so many things. That level of control was truly inspirational for me as a business owner, as I can imagine many people who are customers of Flodesk feels. So that is what we're going to be digging into today. And I mean, Rebecca and her co-founders have gone on to find incredible success, with the company being over 30 million in revenue, and there's like hundreds of thousands of paying customers. And honestly, this is so inspiring as well for designers when you think about like design-led or design-focused companies, and how you can see a practical example of how you can be a designer. You can be a successful design founder. I know Airbnb is the option that's always used for a lot of people, and that can sometimes feel like, oh my God, what are the odds of attaining that level? But here we are today to show you, like, it is very possible. There are different stages to this, and this one hits a bit home. So let's get into this conversation.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So, I mean, Rebecca, we've caught up quite a bit, and you've talked about your upbringing in Silicon Valley and just like almost being born with an Apple computer in your hands, right?
Yes.
And I would love for you to tell us about your background and your path into design.
Of course. Yeah. I think I share in common what a lot of designers feel, where if you get asked the question, how did you get into design? It's like you can't pinpoint it, right? Because it's almost like you were born with it. And for me, it was always curating things and picking things out when my mom took me shopping and going out into the world and having almost like a sense of taste of things that I like and didn't like was something that I remember having my whole life. But of course, when you're younger, you don't really have words to put to it. But yes, my dad was an early Silicon Valley entrepreneur in the 70s and 80s. And when I was born, I'm like dating myself here, but when I was born, we had one of the first computer systems in our house in the entire US, like a personal computer. And my dad got me a Mac when I was 3. And I started playing with it. And I just remember being very attracted to the graphics program. So I was obsessed with Mac Paint. And then there was this precursor to slides, and it was called Hyper Studio, which was kind of like a PowerPoint type application. And then later KidPix came on the market, and Photoshop. And so I was always very attracted to these graphics programs. And I've been using them since day one. And then as I got older and started taking classes, I was really excited about art classes, anything visual arts. And then I studied design in college and sort of got my start that way. But I just feel like it was something that I was attracted to from day one. And computer graphics were something that really piqued my attention. In high school, for example, I joined the robotics team. It was like the first robotics team that was sponsored by Dean Kamen, who is the inventor of the Segway. And the robotics teams were all the rage, at least at the Silicon Valley high schools in my area. And they had a separate division called the 3D animation competition, and you would actually have to create a 3D model of your robot that the engineering team was making, and then recreate the competition the real robot was doing, but in 3D. So there, I had a lot of opportunities to fall in love with different aspects of computer design, and it was just, it was there from the start.
That is so amazing. I can imagine just the sheer excitement being able to experience all of these different scenarios. And I mean, yeah, I've seen that thread in your story, and because I also dug into like articles about you, beyond just our earlier conversation. And I can see definitely that your creative side was something that you explored quite a bit. You mentioned working with celebrities like Hannah and creating Photoshop templates for photographers. And at what point did all of this come to roost and you suddenly decided, you know what? I mean, definitely, it probably doesn't mean like the name Flodesk. It's like, oh, I'm going to create a tool and it's Flodesk, right? But what led up to that in your journey that you decided perhaps this is the time to sort of pull the plug and just take the plunge on creating something?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, I studied design in college, and when I graduated, my first job, I was actually hired, as you mentioned, to create the merchandise and branding and a lot of the stuff that they sell at shows for celebrities. So I was working on projects for Linkin Park, Rihanna, Sheryl Crow, the Pussycat Dolls was really big in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
A lot of other great bands. And I really fell in love with this idea of generating exciting, quick, creative marketing assets for different brands. And obviously each band in themselves is sort of their own brand, their own flavor, different styles of music, different genres, different aesthetics. So I sort of got in the habit then of rapid fire creating assets for different types of brands. And then after that, I saw a gap in the market for professional photographers who were looking for better branding, especially in the wedding photographer space. So I opened a company called Gallery, which was a template shop for professional photographers. And I sold tons of templates there. It was like my first recurring membership site. And this was about in 2011, 2012. And it took off, and that did really well. And I had a lot of different types of templates. So I had templates for branding, templates for pricing, templates for wording to help your clients get ready for their big wedding day with you, and so forth. And one of the templates that I created was MailChimp templates. I had a lot of people requesting it. They were like, hey, can you create templates that will make my email marketing beautiful? And I was like, yeah, sure we can. So the MailChimp templates that we were selling were basically graphics and images. So Photoshop files and then text templates that you would edit in Photoshop, export as an image, and then put into MailChimp. And this was one of my best-selling templates. People loved it. But the only problem is that I would sell all these templates, and then the next day I'd get all of these all caps, super angry emails coming back in the support box being like, what the heck? You sold me this template. You said it was going to be easy. You said I could just drop it in a MailChimp, and I can't figure this darn software out, and I want a refund for my template. And this went on and on. This went on for years, and I was like, okay, wow, we've got some baggage here in the email marketing space for small businesses, and I'm sure somebody's going to come along and create that Squarespace for email marketing. It's just got to happen, right? Like there's got to be some kind of better way of doing email marketing that's more brand focused and more visual and caters to these small businesses who really need specialized visual branding and creative assets in their email in order to get noticed in the inbox. But 2012 went by, 2013, 2014, nothing was happening. And so I'm sitting on this idea. Meanwhile, my co-founder, Martha, was working at Honeybook at the time, which is a CRM for small business owners in San Francisco. And she's working with these top influencers just completely in parallel. We hadn't met yet. And she was seeing that they were having these gorgeous Instagram feeds, right? Beautiful websites, making 7 figures on their businesses, educators, coaches, photographers. And their emails absolutely sucked. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but it was shocking, the contrast between their websites and their social media and their emails. Like, and so she was seeing this in her area, and I was seeing it in mine. And so when she and I met, we were introduced by a mutual friend and had a glass of wine and started chatting about all this. We were like, oh my goodness, this is a real problem. It should have been solved. It's not getting solved. Nobody else is doing it. we may just have to do something about it. And so that's sort of how the concept of Flodesk was born.
I love that. Okay, yeah, you've sort of answered the next question, which is like, how did you meet your co-founders? But then I'll ask it this way: yes, you guys met and connected, and it was instant sparks. Like, this idea has to happen. But at what point did you still pull the trigger? What happened behind the scenes, leading up to, all right, okay, we're actively committing to this thing as a thing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for context too, our technical co-founder Trung is Vietnamese. So he lives in Vietnam and our engineering team is in Vietnam. And he and I had been working together and he helped me build my first company. So he did the website and the recurring payment infrastructure for that many years ago. So he and I had a long-standing relationship and I knew he was brilliant. So in the back of my mind, it was sort of a no-brainer that I would want him heading up our technical team. And then with Martha, we were introduced by a mutual friend. So I went to pitch something through my other business to Honeybook. And she ended up filling in a meeting that someone else didn't show up to. And it was just sort of fate. We ended up meeting and hitting it off. And then we would call each other and I would call her for business advice and she would call me for my perspective on small business. And we just sort of got to talking. And at the time, this was around 2017, it's sort of a legend now, but I had this black notebook and I had all these business ideas. And I was feeling like I really wanted to do something bigger. Like my template shop was doing well, but I wanted something more. And I come from the Silicon Valley ecosystem and I'd always wanted a tech company my whole life. But I also knew the amount of work, money, time, effort, and the team that has to go into creating a tech company. So in my mind, it was almost an insurmountable barrier, but I had the idea in my notebook nonetheless. And so when Martha and I sat down and started playing with the first mock-ups and just being like, what could this look like just for fun? Sparks started flying and it sort of became real and took on a life of its own. And then at the beginning of January 2018, we signed the papers and we got Trong on board and we're like, okay, we're just going to do this. And I think that's the magic, right? It's like the moment of inception. I can't pinpoint exactly when that day was down to the hour, but it was just like this moment of creative energy of these great minds coming together and saying, we're committing to this. We're going to bring this into the world. And the rest is history, I guess.
Okay. Let's go into the moment where things began to happen. And it was just like from a tiny snowball and it just got really big. So there was this incredible moment, right, when you had a launch date selected and someone sent an early email, right? It just threw a wonderful wrench in the works in a very delightful way. Tell us about that.
Oh, I actually love this story because it's one of my favorite. Like when I'm old, I'm going to look back on that moment and be like, that was one of the defining moments of my life. So we had been working on betas and prototypes for about a year and a half, and we'd even gone through the Y Combinator startup school, and we had won one of their grants, which was great. And we'd been creating a very beta version of the platform and inviting friends and family and a few select people that we were outreaching to on a manual basis to come and try the software. So I would say that we signed the papers to start the company in 2018. We worked for about a year and a half on our first product, and we were starting to do user testing and developing the product, which I'm sure we'll talk about that as well, so we can go into that. But then around the middle of 2019, so we had set a launch date for August 12th, and we were doing this huge partnership campaign with the Rising Tide Society, which is a big group, like it's almost like I call it AA for small businesses. But it's a really amazing support group around the world where small businesses can come together and share their stories and things they're struggling with and help each other. And so we'd planned this big, hopefully explosive launch campaign. But the month before, one of our really good friends who was an influencer and had 15,000 people on her mailing list had tried the software in beta, and it was still, there's so many bugs, right? It was so rough around the edges, but the core was there. It was like this cool drag and drop experience, like you mentioned, and being able to visualize your content in a way people hadn't seen before in email. And she played with it for a few minutes and she called and she's like, Rebecca, Martha, this is amazing. Like, I'm so excited about this. Can I send an email to my list? And we were like, great. And I don't even think we had CSV list import at that point. We were still putting the final touches on all the moments of the platform. So we manually imported subscribers for her.
Wow.
And she ended up sending out this beautiful newsletter, and it had lots of different content blocks that were visual, and it had all of her brand colors in it. And then at the bottom, she had put a block that said, "Are you loving the way this email looks? Try Flodesk." And we had this Slack channel, right, that would tell us every time someone started a trial. And at first, like I said, we were doing manual outreach and we were sharing it around in the Silicon Valley world and our friends in San Francisco. So we would maybe get 2 to 3 trials a day, just organically from the word just beginning to spread. And then the moment she sends that email, we get 50 trials within the hour. And then in the next hour, it was 100. Wow. And the next hour, another 100. And then the next day, there were tutorials all over YouTube. And then the next couple of days, it was all over Instagram, all over Facebook. It just exploded in the small business community. And everyone was talking about it. And it's funny because, like, in total transparency, leading up until the launch, I had like the same fear I think that every entrepreneur has, that like we've been working on this thing for a long time, but we don't know how the public's going to receive it. And my husband, who's been a huge cheerleader of the company since the beginning, sent me this YouTube video, and it was some kind of a funny meme going around where someone had like 80,000 mouse traps set up in a ping pong ball, and like the ball would go and set off the mouse traps, and then they would set each other off, and it went viral. And he was like, "I actually think this is what's going to happen," and he was right. So the company sort of launched itself through the launch of the influencer's email about a month before we had the campaign, and then the campaign just sort of lit things on fire. So yeah, it's quite an amazing story.
No, that's an incredible story, and I can only imagine what was going on in your mind. Like, tell us about that. Like, as you watch these trial numbers just go through the roof, what happened? How did you handle the unexpected virality? You mentioned that your service crashed, right? And then there was a fear that your business might be over before you even got started, and that must have been very stressful for you all. So just walk us through all of these moments. How did you navigate it? What did you learn about transparency and community building from that experience?
Well, I think one of my favorite moments from that time was, you're right, like this. There was a point where we had something like 1,000 people signing up in a day, which was wildly past any expectations that we had about what our launch could look like. And our servers went down because our database couldn't handle the load, because we frankly were not prepared for that kind of scale. We had no idea. And I think it was a moment too for the co-founders to begin our journey of creating really authentic, strong relationships with each other, because before that it was kind of everything was hypothetical, and we could get away with just doing things as we did and not having really hard conversations. But when that happened, there was some friction internally, because it was like everyone was just trying to look smart in front of everyone else and not take on the responsibility of why this happened. And it forced us to really begin the journey, like I said, of having better communication with each other. So it was really stressful. And we had these moments where we were having these arguments internally where it felt in the moment like it was life or death, right? But I also remember Martha and I going into our Flodesk Insiders, which is our Facebook group, and we were doing a live video, and we were like, you know what, maybe this is it. Like, our system went down. We're a brand new company. Nobody's going to trust us. And we ended up going in and recording a very heartfelt video saying, hey guys, we broke the internet. We had no idea this was going to happen. And we're working really hard to fix it. And we thought we were over. But our community responded, and they were like, wow, like, we love you so much. Thank you so much for the transparency. We're not used to founders of companies coming out and directly addressing issues with their member base. And we had this insane outpouring of love from our community, which was the exact opposite of what we thought. And so I think there were so many lessons in there, right, about like co-founders and their communication, and the need to be raw and vulnerable with each other, and saying like, hey, like, we're actually not prepared. We don't know exactly what we're doing, but we're going to figure it out. And then on the audience side, being able to go out and be completely honest with our members, and having that be something that sort of defined our brand and who we are, and people like building more trust with our community because we were that transparent, versus not saying anything and just going on like nothing happened. So yeah, there were a lot of lessons in there.
Oh wow. That there's so much to take away from this. So much. But I want to take us back to, you mentioned launching with your MVP, focusing on user interviews and all the no-code solutions as much as possible, and also just really staying lean is what I'm hearing in that very
Yes.
early stage, staying as lean as possible. What was your approach to, like, what were your thoughts as you were going through this motion around like just the user interviews? What were you hoping to get out of those, and how were you thinking about testing in the very early days?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I have to credit my co-founder Martha with being the forcing function on user testing, because when we first started out, I did the whole designer builder thing where I was like, I'm just going to go wild and create these amazing designs and they're going to be perfect. And and it's going to come all out of my head and it's going to be great. Right. And I just remember this really humbling moment where Martha was like, Rebecca, we have to put it in front of users, potential members. And so she set up something like 6 people from the small business community in San Francisco to come into my apartment and actually sit at my computer and test things out. And I was so confident. I was like, great, I've got these mock-ups. They're gorgeous. They're perfect. Everyone's going to love them. And then the people sit down. We have the first tester sit down. I remember she's actually a well-known style blogger. And she sits down and Martha's like, okay, where would you go to create a new email? And she moves the mouse around to every part of the screen and she looks at us and she was almost looking like she got in trouble or something. She's like, I don't know. I don't know where the new button is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's right there. It's right there on the side. But I after that interview, which was brutal because every single screen was a bomb, I realized that I had made a fundamental mistake of not incorporating feedback into my designs earlier. So what we were putting in front of people were not wireframes. They were like fully fleshed out designs where I had done all of my typography magic and it was colorful and branded and exciting. And it was a truly humbling moment and like a pivotal moment in my career when I realized that the designs mean nothing if you don't put them in front of people and people don't get it, right? And from that moment on, I started to iterate. So I would watch the interviews and Martha would ask, where would you go to do this? And people's mouse would go somewhere to find it. But and sometimes they would actually say something else verbally. So we watched where the mouse went. And then we would put the button or the link or whatever action we wanted in that spot where they naturally gravitated to, or something in their subconscious that they couldn't put their finger on. Made them go. And then from there, we started to build a very fluid and successful experience. But it took dozens and dozens of interviews, like an outrageous amount of interviews to get the UI to be as smooth as it is. And so I think some of my advice to design builders is like, don't wait to get your designs in front of people. And I tell this to my design team too. This is a core part of how we operate. Like, I'm like, make gray boxes, make wireframes, save the drop shadows, the typography, the colors, everything for down the road. Yeah. Just get the interactions right and get things where people truly expect them. And it's pretty easy nowadays because software is becoming more and more standardized, but you would be surprised at how seemingly difficult it is for people to find things that might seem intuitive or easy to use. So truly the only way to know for sure if your product's going to behave the way people expect it to is to put it in front of them. So we got through that first brutal round of 6 interviews that day. And then from there, we started to iterate based on people's feedback and got the product to a really good place. But that was a very brutal moment for me as a designer. And I definitely say my ego took a few hits down. But I'm so grateful for it because it was one of the best lessons I learned. And we learned it quickly. And now we're able to repeat that process in everything we do.
Honestly, it's what you said. Like, many of these things today feel like it's been standardized, so perhaps people take it for granted. But I'm just thinking back to, first of all, very humbling experience, right? As a designer. But as you described those motions that you went through, I also recognized how that is perhaps what we're seeing with the growth of design today, where it's you talking about like putting the mouse where people naturally gravitate towards by watching this user behavior, right? And I imagine it's just, yeah, that was definitely a surprise for you to see how people were behaving, and then having to realize it's not about your lockups and it's not about the pretty work you've done. It's more importantly about like how people perceive and what behaviors they're used to. So let's talk about this mid with Flodesk branding thing. right? Because before I even started to work in graphic design, it was one of my favorite things about the emails, right? I always loved it. Teachers, I just thought, I mean, once again, I had no idea about growth and all the tactics and things like that. I just thought this was incredibly brilliant to know that every time the tool is used, it just the potential or the exponential potential of how many people we can reach, right? Besides this, and as you've gone on, what other like product-led growth tactics have you since implemented when you think about just organic growth and how you build virality? And how have you thought about like the success, measure the success of these tactics? How does your team perhaps do experimentation? You said it's the goal for the design team right now, like put it in front of users. How do you approach experimenting?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have two sort of different lanes or processes for growth experimentation, and then UX and UI development, which naturally includes user testing into our flows. But when it comes to growth and designing for growth, I might ruffle some feathers here by saying this, but I truly believe that your product at the very beginning has to be inherently viral, in that it's something that excites people or gets people to want to share it for whatever reason. So I think that you can take a product that's already sort of launched or has organic interest, and then you can light that on fire and put gasoline on it to get the growth up with a lot of experimentation and adding in mechanisms that allow it to be viral. But inherently, it has to be something exciting that people love in the first place. So I'll just say that. And then once you have that, I mean, for us, it was sort of easy because we subscribed to the Hotmail model, where you had which is how Hotmail grew in the 90s and early 2000s, but you have a viral footer at the bottom of the emails, right? So it says made with love and Flodesk. And so every time an email goes out, our branding is on it. And you just can't buy that kind of exposure. We're talking about billions and billions of impressions at this point. So that's one thing. And then also with our forms, right? So like our opt-in forms, some of them have viral loop potential on them because we have our footer. And the other piece too is like our emails and our forms sort of have an iconic look to them. So when people see them, they kind of associate that with Flodesk. So that's sort of a side effect of having more and more material out in the world. But I would definitely say, that footer is one of the major growth loops. And then on top of that, Martha was brilliant from the start with our business strategy, created a referral program so that we had a place to share the link, and we have a deal where you can give people 50% off their first year Flodesk, and in exchange, you get an affiliate commission as well. And so this program worked really, really well in the early days because people were already talking about Flodesk and already excited about it. But that affiliate program just gave them one more reason to go shout about Flodesk from the rooftops. And again, you had to have that organic excitement from the start, but then these pieces accelerated it. And then from there, you can do lots of experiments, right? Like you can change the wording on the footer, you can change the way the footer looks. And then, we have paid ads as well and a whole marketing arm at this point. But when we're talking about like a product-led growth, I think that the footer is really the main place that we focus on. And, once you have that viral loop going, there are a lot of ways that you can tweak it and play with visual appearance, like I said, and copy. So yeah.
There was a referral program that you talked about earlier, right? How did you grow the Flodesk community? How were you able to just really lean into that small business community? And I'll tack on another question to this, where you talked about with the explosion of Flodesk, there were tutorials that were starting to go all over YouTube, right? And organic search traffic was increasing. What was the approach to then encouraging that user-generated content? Because yes, one, it can be very organic, but after a while, you also have to feed the fodder, right?
Yeah.
So how did you leverage that momentum to grow Flodesk?
Well, first of all, I would say that it wasn't so much that we leaned into the small business community. I would say the small business community leaned into us. I think it was truly embedded in our DNA from the start, right? Because when we were first designing Flodesk, we invited so many people from that community to come beta test for them. So by the time we launched, it was like our members actually felt like they had been a part of developing the software along with us. So I think there was a bit of a founder market fit as well. Martha and I both came from the small business community. So people just naturally saw us as one of them. And they felt like Flodesk was a product of the community coming together and working together to create something. So I think that was really beautiful. And yes, and then organically people started sharing. They started creating tutorials or a lot of blog posts, which helped us our SEO. And you're right, we had a huge explosion of them when we launched. And I actually think that it's been pretty steady as far as people creating more content as they discover Flodesk. It's almost like we like to call it a flywheel, a yes. perpetual motion machine where we see more content about Flodesk every day that comes out. But you're right that, there are things you can do to encourage the behavior and to incentivize people to share more. So we recently launched a partner program where some of our affiliates who meet a certain criteria of sharing about Flodesk can apply and become sort of like a higher tier affiliate where they're eligible for even more financial incentives. And in exchange, they're willing to share more and they commit to a certain amount of sharing. So I think in a way, it's very basic, but if the more you reward people for behavior, the more they're going to lean into it. And we want to make sure that people, and like even affiliate programs these days are so ubiquitous in the SaaS world that it's like, if you think about an influencer's link in bio, right? Their stand store, their link tree or whatever, there's only limited slots and there's only one first place slot for your company. So if you want people to share about it, you have to think about it that way, that you're almost competing for that top slot of sharing. And I think there's two factors to it, right? There's one, it's like investing in your brand and creating a brand and a product that people just absolutely love. They love so much that they're willing to prioritize sharing about it over something else because they genuinely believe that what you're offering brings a lot of value to their audience. So that's really important and shouldn't be discounted. And the second piece is monetary, right? Like people want to feel like they're being compensated for their work, and influencers' work these days is very valuable and coveted by a lot of companies. So you want to make sure that you design your programs in a way that compensate people for the work they're doing and can compete with the way that other companies are compensating them for sharing about their product.
Yeah. And to be honest, when you think about it in the context of small businesses, right? When it comes to affiliate, the monetary value definitely goes a longer way for the small businesses, and as well as the discounts and things like that. So it's incredibly valuable for everyone involved.
I totally agree with that. And I think small business owners have very limited time and resources, and it is really important to compensate them for the work that they're doing. Every time they go and share about Flodesk, they are doing that, for themselves, but also on our behalf. So we want to make sure that as the small business community has invested in us, as we've grown, we want to invest back in them.
I love it. Okay, we are going to focus on you now, Rebecca. Let's talk about you. Right, because you've mentioned earlier on as a designer, getting the what's that phrase? Come to Mary
or come to Jesus.
Yeah, the come to Jesus moment, right? Where you got your ass handed to you and you realize very quickly, okay, it's not about my pretty mock-ups. We need to figure something out here, right? But then also in the early days, you mentioned just initially wanting to remain the sole designer, right, on the team, and resisting that idea of building a team even as the workload got more.
Yes.
Right? So at what point did your perspective shift and you had to say, come, Rebecca, something's got to give? And what are some of the challenges you have then faced transitioning from being an IC to being an leader?
Absolutely. Well, I think that back in a few years ago, I was the sole designer and it was just completely bottlenecking the company. I mean, you can imagine you have this growing team, you're hiring product team, you've got PMs, you've got lots of engineers coming in, and then there's one designer and she's being stubborn about hiring. But I think, I came to it after a lot of prodding from my teammates. So I have to give them credit for being the forcing function there, because I'm not sure I would have conceded as early as I did if it were just me, but I'm so glad that they did, right? And they were right. And I think the transition from IC to leader has been challenging in a lot of ways. Like, I am a creative by nature and I love getting into the weeds. I love sketching and trying to find solutions to difficult problems with design. And at first it was really hard for me. And I almost felt frustrated and angry sometimes, waking up and being like, oh, but I want to do these projects and now I'm managing instead and I'm just reviewing everything. But as I've grown and the company's grown, I've started to realize that my work is about passing on my design philosophies and our Flodesk ideals and everything, that all of the decision making that went into making our first successful product to other people. And my product is when my team is successful now. And that mindset shift took a long time and a lot of years. And I did a lot of reading on it and I took courses. And also Martha and I have worked with business coaches as well, which has been really helpful. And I would definitely say it was a struggle as a creative, but again, it's one of those like ass handing to moments, I guess, as you put it, because we have some of the most talented, incredible people on our team who have even more experience than I did when working on UX UI. And so as you grow your team, if you pick the right people and bring the right team in, you become exponentially more capable of producing amazing work. And I needed to shift my mindset about that as well, right? To being like, I'm the only one who knows how to work on this. Like I'm being really honest here because I know that's not the best thing to necessarily to share, but it's the truth, right? And I think a lot of designers go through it. And I think a lot of people don't talk about that enough in the creative business. But once you start to view your work as the success of others, and then starting to see your team really grasp the philosophies that you laid out and working within the design guidelines, and then making it their own and coming up with ideas that you would have never thought of and being completely blown away in design reviews, it's the best feeling ever. So I would say it's still, there's still moments where I'm like, oh, I wish I could be working on that, or just wanting to get into the weeds with the team. And I think the beauty is that I still can, right? Like I've kept the team intentionally small. We're very tightly knit. There's a lot of trust between each other, and it almost feels a bit like a flat organization. So I can still go in and sit with designers for a couple days, or do an intensive offsite where we all sit down together and work on solutions together. And so now I feel like I have the best of both worlds.
That's fantastic. Okay, but I'm not letting you off the hook just yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Talk to me about coaching and how that has helped your growth and development as well. Right. We've talked about some breakthroughs that you experienced with coaching. How did that help navigating those challenges and anxieties of leadership you had earlier?
Absolutely. Actually, I love talking about my coaching journey because I would say when we first started the company, I've naturally always been a very anxious person. I would say that my anxiety has gotten in the way of a lot of opportunities for me and my ability to successfully deal with people. And I would say I'm a very sensitive and empathetic person, but in a way, I lock up when I feel like people are upset with me or that people aren't happy. I had a really hard time dealing with my anxiety and my fears and frustrations and doubts. And I have really strong emotions. I'm a creative. I have more of what you would call an artistic temperament. Maybe some would blame my red hair. I don't know. But I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. And so I would bring them to work, right? And if I was frustrated with something, there would be no filter. I would just sort of let it out. And it caused a lot of chaos, you can imagine, right? That's a very difficult personality to work with. And so a lot of people go to coaching for different reasons, but for me, I needed to learn how to calm my nervous system. Mm-hmm. And when I started to learn how to do that, it didn't mean either that I don't get anxious or don't get frustrated or angry or have feelings anymore. It just means that I'm like, oh, wow, Rebecca, you're coming into this conversation with a lot of anxiety. Maybe it's better to go take a walk and then come back to it after you write that Slack message. And so the coaching just helped me at the most fundamental level, put a space between my actions and my reactions. And I think that being able to get a hold of this and address this for a lot of people would make them much better leaders. And from there, I was able to start to come into my interactions with people with more curiosity and asking questions and having people explain instead of just assuming that they were trying to do something or had bad intent and then going off from that perspective in my mind, which was not helping me build a team. And so I think, that was really the focus of the coaching, and it's helped so much.
Right. And there are so many things you touched on. I'm like, read me. So I'll use the term you used in, which is the artist's temperament, right? And I'm almost willing to bet that a bunch of designers can relate to it, right? Which is when you're interacting with people, one, having to spend as much energy focusing on the way you communicate, but also the way you receive what someone else has communicated, right? And you just have to be like, you sent a message of, and now your anxiety is spiraling, just thinking about all the different scenarios. Oh my God, what if they take it this way or that way? Or have I said it the right way? Do I come across as this? Yeah, I'm with you on that. But it's also great to hear and inspiring to hear how you've been able to walk through that. And before we go on, I just wonder then, has there been a scenario where you found that as you got better with this communication in your work life, it transcended into personal as well, and how you just related to people in general beyond that?
I definitely think so. I think that when you do that kind of work on yourself, it almost transforms the way that your brain works. And so you start to develop this muscle around how, like, I call it taking my temperature, but like, it's like the emotional temperature, right? Like, how am I coming into this conversation? How am I feeling? And being able to recognize where I'm at in that state, and then being like, hey, maybe this isn't the best moment to have this conversation, or like, hey, maybe I should park this for another time, or like, hey, maybe I actually came into that in a way that I didn't intend to, and I just need to go and say sorry and work it out. And also having sort of like the bravery to have hard conversations too, because that was another side effect of having all that anxiety, was that I would avoid the conversations that actually needed to happen to truly resolve issues at a fundamental level. And so developing those skills and being able to say, hey, I'm seeing this, let's have a real chat about it. Like, tell me everything, what's going on in your mind, tell me your perspective. Can we get on the same page about this? Here's what I'm feeling, here are my concerns, and laying things out in a more rational way. Invites other people into that space where they feel safe to share everything openly. And maybe there are emotions in it, maybe there aren't, but it allows a space where truly difficult conversations can happen. And that's a skill that works both in the workforce and out. I think it's just a fundamental piece of having healthy human interactions anywhere in your life.
I love that. Yeah, that's definitely a lesson I'll be taking away from this conversation.
And I'm telling, it's a work in progress too. It's not like it's perfect every day, right? Like, far from it, but it's better. It's better. And and now I have tools to be able to, and also to reset, because sometimes I do get overworked. Sometimes I do overbook my schedule and I get too ambitious, and then I get so exhausted, but by the end of the day, a seemingly routine Slack message can just completely trigger me and get me frustrated. And I know that, hey, like, I had too many meetings. I need to close my laptop. This doesn't need to be addressed today. I can come back and sleep on it and come back tomorrow. So, yeah.
Okay. So now, in thinking about everything we've just talked about and how Flodesk as a globally distributed team, right? I imagine there's also a lot of cultural references and backgrounds and things, like just differences that you might be experiencing for the first time. Before we talk about the design consistency, I'm also just curious to note, how have you been able to, what are the strategies, right, that you've taken when it comes to then communicating across borders, really, in providing feedback and also receiving feedback, and not just building community in a team that is remote. And then finally, when it comes to like maintaining the design consistency in the work, going from being the sole designer to now having the team, right? And just like, yeah, just finding that strong culture across these different teams and different cultures. How have you navigated that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that any remote culture is a challenge. There are some blessings that come with it, right? Like, it's actually really nice for designers to be able to have like a hiding space where they can go without having to be in an office, having distractions and human interactions, and really focus on their work. So I actually think there's some major advantages to it. And obviously being able to source the best from all over the world instead of a certain geographic location. It's a huge advantage. I would say that we have so many cultures and people coming in from different countries, different backgrounds. But the beautiful thing is that I like to focus on what unites us and what we all come here to do, which is to make an incredible experience for small business owners. And everyone on the Flodesk team is passionate about helping small business around the world. And so when we focus on that as a core, then it brings us all together. So I really love that. I think our mission, like our vision is to create the most loved email platform in the world. And we're so passionate about helping small businesses be successful that it brings us together from every corner of the world. And I love that about our culture. And then specifically about the design team, This was actually a bit of a challenge, especially because we just scaled the design team from 1 or 2 people all the way to 5 or 6, and that was a really big change because that happened in a short period of time. And I actually changed my life and moved from the San Francisco area to Portugal for 1 year so that I could be on the European time zone with my team to really work with them in person, train them, have real-time feedback so that I can impart I guess my design philosophies onto the team and have them really own that, and then get the team to a place where everyone is working together, like rowing the boat together in the same direction. And I think that was a little bit hard to do with only 2 hours of overlap a day. So I did change my life to address some of the issues, it's been amazing. It's been an incredible journey. So that happened. And then aside from that, we have a pretty rigorous design review process. So twice a week we meet and we go through each project, and it's a chance for me to give feedback to the team members and also for the team members to give feedback to each other. And then we have a lot of jam sessions in between. So even if we're not physically present, we can hop on Zoom together and do a Figma jam out and talk about different solutions. So I would say it's a combination of like a temporary relocation to come and really build a strong design muscle and build repertoire and different processes and systems that we can put in place so that regardless of where I am or other team members are in the world later on, we have that strong foundation already built together. And then this really highly collaborative remote culture, and then review processes. So I would say it's a combination of all of those things put together.
Where I want to launch in, it's the aspect of hiring. You talked about you had to make a very big sacrifice at Zoom, leaving San Francisco, coming down to Portugal in terms of building a very robust team for Flodesk. So in terms of hiring a designer, in terms of expanding your team, what are your tactics to ensuring that you get these sort of designers that are passionate about what you are building currently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have a very rigorous selection process for the designers that we bring in. And a lot of people that are on the team currently have been referrals from other team members. And I think that when you have a team that's really excited about the work that they're doing, and then they go and share it with other people that they've worked with that they know that are the best of the best and convince them to come join, this is the best possible scenario, right? So I think we're really lucky. And then aside from that, there have been a lot of tech layoffs recently, right? And we've been able to sort of swoop in and grab some amazing talent from these unfortunate events. Like we were very sad to see layoffs happen in the industry in general, but we're also excited to be able to extend job offers to individuals who are extremely talented, and we feel lucky that we're getting them from the talent pool. So I think that it's a combination of, like I said, having a strong referral engine, and we have incentives internally to have team members bring in people that they know and help us in recruitment. But the other piece too, though, is that when we talk to designers who are interested in applying to Flodesk, they're very excited by the work they're doing. So I don't think it's just about team culture or having a great recruitment arm. I think that you have to be working on projects and ideas that genuinely excite people. And if you have a strong brand and you have product design that people want to be a part of, you're naturally going to get people who fit into the work that you're doing just because they're so excited about doing it. So overall, I would say I don't have like one specific strategy, except to say work on really cool stuff that other people want to join you on, have a mission that excites people, and you'll naturally attract the best.
Yeah, so I mean, just a quick follow-up to that. So what in specific do you look for in a designer? Like, what are those key attributes that you think, apart from you talked about great people recommending some of people they've worked with, what are those key attributes you look for in a designer you think this is fit for Flodesk?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors that go into it, but a more fundamental level, I look for the ability to distill complex problems into visual simplicity, because there are a lot of things that you can teach in design school and a lot of things that you can teach when people join your team, but the ability to distill something complex into something really simple and present that simplicity to the world is, I think some people are just more naturally inclined to be able to do that than others. And it's a really core part of why Flodesk has been successful. And it's something that is really important to me. So when I look at portfolios, when I look at work, I want to see visual simplicity. I want to see clarity of the work. I want to see clarity of the interactions. And you can tell that right off the bat from portfolios. Is this person thinking in a really streamlined, clear way that gets translated into the work? Because to me, like really clear, simple graphic design work and product design work is actually a sort of almost like a byproduct of having really clear thought, right? Like if you have clarity of mind and clarity of objective, that shows up in the work. So that's number one. And then number two is just like having a really great eye and having taste. Like I want to see portfolios and work where people show me that they have a great eye, that they understand what beautiful typography and beautiful visuals and like interactions that are visual, just as visually pleasing as they are easy to use, show up prominently in multiple pieces of work as well. Because that's the other thing, right? Like you never know who someone's manager is or what kind of feedback or direction or what other people have been working on a project. So I want to see not only these attributes in one project, but consistently in the projects that they do. And then we also have a process in our interview where we ask potential team members to do a test project where they get to present and share their thought process in their work. And again, like I don't expect perfect work in those interviews because people don't have full context of the product. And it's sort of difficult to like design a complete solution for something when you only have very limited context and very limited time to do it. But at the same time, you can see from those interviews, is this person clear in their presentation? Do they understand at the fundamental level their problem they're solving? And then do they have a clever solution for it? So I know that was a bit of a long answer, but really it comes down to clarity of thought and interaction, and then beauty of the design work itself.
Yeah, amazing. I think these are like cheat code for designers who are like kind of buying Flodesk, right? So right now you work as the co-founder, chief design officer, and also you see a designer definitely. So how do you balance these different roles, and how do you ensure that you make your team feel empowered and autonomous, and why you still maintain that cohesive design vision?
Well, it's a great question. And I can't say that I'm the most balanced work-life balanced person in the world, right? I think that's part of it. Like I work like 2 work days sometimes a day, and that's just life. And I think that that's something that as a founder, it's sort of like a responsibility you take on. As the chief design officer, I'm responsible for both the brand design as well as the product design, and those are sort of like my primary functions as an executive. But then as a co-founder, if there's an emergency with the company, if something's going on, if there's something high level with the business strategy, or something good or something bad that's happening at the higher business level, I have to be present for those conversations as well. So it's sort of this constant balancing act of going back and forth between the founder role, the executive role, and then occasionally like the IC designer role. Less and less these days though. And like I said too, I just think that requires a lot of extra time and extra hours and elbow grease put in because there's only so many hours in the day. And then as far as making my team feel empowered, I think this is something that is like a learning process for me and a learning curve. And as Innie and I were discussing, it is really challenging for someone who's been an IC designer their whole lives to let go and view your work as the output of the team rather than what you output personally. But I think a lot of that has to do with just sitting down with my team, and instead of giving them, spoon feeding them solutions or telling them go do this or make it look exactly like this, it's my job to ensure that at any given moment that I can come to a team member and say, do you understand the problem that you're solving? This is a huge project. Can we sit down together and break it out into pieces so that we tackle things one at a time and the problems that you're solving one at a time? And then just sharing my own perspective and processes with them and saying, hey, like this is what's worked in the past. This is how I did it. Can you recreate this process and get a similar result? So yeah, I think it's just a mindset shift. It comes down to almost like what our coach said, through you, not by you. So having this mentality that things should go through me and that I have a rigorous review process, as well as focusing on passing on my mental models for how I approach work and my design processes, but not actually the work being done by me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Exactly. I'm going to be stealing that through you.
Yeah, we had a really great business coach and that was sort of his motto. It really helped reframe our thinking.
It's important. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a bit of the fun designer side of things, right? Flodesk underwent a rebrand recently.
Yes.
Uh, I read the whole 15 minutes blog of it. Okay, it was a joy to read. And but I want to hear from your perspective. What was that journey like? And you described, there was a phrase you used in the blog post where you said the entire identity was being rooted in the spirit of our values. And I thought, like, what? And I also read that there are 5 principles that guide Flodesk, right? What are they? How did they ground you and the team during this experience? And perhaps what actually led to the rebrand as well in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we were working with Dia Studio, the owner of Dia Studio, the founder, Mitch Paone, was a longtime friend of mine. So I like to put that out there in case if people are like, oh, you guys are copying Squarespace. But the truth is, we were incredibly inspired by the rebrand that Squarespace did in 2018. And I was delighted to see that it was somebody that I knew personally. And then it inspired me to want to bring some of the goodness that Squarespace did in that process with Dia to Flodesk. And one of my favorite pieces of it, obviously, was the custom typeface that we worked with Francois Rapot on, who's one of the most renowned Swiss typographers in the world. And he did Flodesk sans for us. So that was sort of a dream come true because I'd always wanted our own font. But I think we had gotten to the point where we had a really interesting brand, but it didn't have any guidelines at all. So even if you look at our Instagram post from the era before we started working with Dia, there was very little consistency in the typography and the colors and the imagery. And if you're trying to build a brand, having certain pillars of it that are super consistent, that make it recognizable, are critical. So as we grew, I felt that we needed to take a bit more of a systems approach to the brand. And that's why we chose Dia as well, because they sort of specialize in brands for modern companies where they provide you with an entire templating system for your brand. So it's not just like, here's your logo, here's your colors, and here's your font choices. It's like, let's find some fundamental pieces in the brand that you can as reusable elements over and over. And this is also more efficient for the team as well, because they're not having to start from scratch. So those were sort of the pain points that we were trying to address. And then for me, like, I think at the very, very core of our brand, more than pillars, more than statements, or like saying that these are the things that define us, like almost like in a chart, at the core, we're just all about our members and small business. Like, everything we do is about our members. And when we write copy for our marketing, we actually pull their phrases that they've used to talk about us into our marketing. When we work on our templates, we actually look at real world brands and try to say, like, if we could redesign this to be more effective and more consistent with our brand, what would that design look like? And so at the core, everything we do is focused on our members. And we've seen a lot of companies do rebrands where they're like, look, we hired this agency, look how cool we are, right? But we really wanted to make our brand about our members and bring their voices into it and build something that centered them. And so I like at the core of the rebranding, I think like that is the heart of Flodesk, right? It's our members. Like I said, when we were talking at the beginning of the show, like they invested in us when we launched. And the rebranding was really about a return to putting our members at the center of everything that we do.
I think I like that. And it's always good for businesses or companies or products to put the customers, their immediate customer, at the center of what they do, because with that, they are able to sort of relate more with the product, and the barrier and everything is just broken that way. So looking at our current state, or our current, I don't want to say it's the future again because it's here, right?
It's here.
So the AI world, right? Because it's not like in the future again. We are in the AI AI powered era. Where is Flodesk at this point in terms of the AI space, and what are the innovations available, and what can your customers expect from Flodesk in terms of integrating AI into the system?
I would say that AI has been on our radar for a long time. And again, everything that we do puts our members at the center. So we don't build product unless we truly hear a need from our members. And so when AI came on the scene, we were very excited about it, and we still are. But at the same time, we wanted to be careful not to simply bring AI into the platform just for the sake of AI, right? Like, it exploded everywhere. Everyone was talking about it a couple of years ago, and it seemed like ubiquitous. And we wanted to make sure that that we would, we do plan to bring AI into Flodesk, that we do it in a way that's very careful not to disrupt what some of the core pieces of what make Flodesk special. And I think part of that is that our emails feel very personalized and from the heart. And so we didn't just want to jump on the bandwagon, right? Like we wanted to see where we could actually use AI to solve problems that our members are facing, instead of saying, hey, like AI is here, let's just put it in and see what happens. So we have like an entire track on our roadmap dedicated to researching and bringing AI into Flodesk. And I can't go into too much detail on that yet, but I can say that we are working on some really exciting pieces of bringing AI into our experience that actually help people solve the problems that they experience, and reducing friction, right, in the email creation process, and also in their automations. So we're very excited about it, and more to come.
We all be looking for that. Yeah, so for designers who are looking to start up their business, as a designer who had successfully created the business or started a product, what are the lessons that you could share for designers like that in their early stage? What should they really start looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the biggest one is to incorporate feedback from your target customers from day one, right? And that's a mistake that I made. And I was talking to Innie about that whole story and how it was a very humbling experience to put my mock-ups in front of users for the first time. But, like really be okay with putting rough versions of whatever you're working on in front of people and getting feedback, and building around people's feedback, identifying who you're building for and what problems you're trying to solve, and then solve them with the community that you're trying to target. And like I think so many people would achieve success in their startups so much more quickly if they started with that place. And I think like just making, and that ensures, right, that you're building something that people truly love. And if you have something that people truly love, you'll have the organic sharing, you'll have the virality, you'll have all of the pieces that come together, the referral program flywheel, you'll have all those organically. And then there are so many ways that you can layer on, hire agencies and do paid ads and experiment with different marketing campaigns, all of that. You can do all of that. But at the core, at the kernel, you have to build something that people love, that are solving a real problem that people are excited about. And everything else can be built out from that.
Cool. Amazing. Over to you, need to round up the episode.
Yeah, this has been a really, really fun conversation, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Oh my God, we've had a lot of fun. I hope you have too.
Yes, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Okay. So for everyone listening, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, going from Rebecca's journey in Silicon Valley and practically being born with a computer in her hands. You've heard about her entire creative arc, with going from just creating templates and creating graphic related work for different brands and different celebrities, to coming to this moment where there was a problem. She met our co-founders, and there was a problem with the email marketing sector, if I can call it that, and then deciding that, okay, it is time this entire space needs a serious design overhaul. But just going from, it's not just design only, which you've heard, we've talked about it as a come to Jesus moment, and just really growing as a designer, growing as a business person, and just coming to the point where you see yourself, if this is the pathway that you're thinking about as a designer, that it is very possible for you to find a problem space, something that means a lot to you, and figure out how to test very quickly and see if there is a response in the market to this, and how everything can just evolve from there. And I hope that this has been helpful for you all. And we are going to go into the lightning round questions, which we use as a chance to get to know our guests better. But right before we go into that, Rebecca, can you tell us where we can find you and any links that you may want to share?
Absolutely. I don't have a very strong social media footprint because I'm more of an email girl, but I am on Instagram if you want to follow me. I have very few posts on there, but if you shoot me a DM, I check it. And then if you want to learn more about Flodesk and our community, we have an amazing Facebook group called Flodesk Insiders where you can come in and join and ask questions to current members. It's like a very open spirit in there, people helping each other out. It's a great community of small business owners who are passionate about Flodesk and email marketing. So that's a great place to go. And of course, visiting our website at flodesk.com, you can learn more about everything that we do.
Awesome. Okay. And I know that you are currently hiring as well.
Yes, we actually we're looking for a senior product designer. So if you know anybody, and we have if you're interested in applying, we have a careers link at the bottom of our website at flodesk.com, and we have a role open there.
Yeah. So the lightning question, I hope it's going to be lightning this time, right? So what are the top 3 products you use daily and you love?
Okay, well, Slack is one of them, and I love WhatsApp as well. I would say WhatsApp doesn't have the most beautiful design, but it's highly functional, and I can't live without it, especially being in Europe. So yeah, I love that. And then I use Notion as well, which is a favorite tool. Oh, and I have to throw in Figma because we can't live without that either. So Figma, Notion, WhatsApp, Slack.
Yeah, okay, cool. What's one design resource you keep going back to and you recommend to every designer?
Oh, that is such a good one. You know what? I know this sounds a little bit weird, but I would say Pinterest, because whenever I'm working with my team, I ask them to do a lot of visual research, and Pinterest is one of my favorite tools to be able to do that quickly.
Cool. I think that's great too. What are 3 books you like to recommend also? Could be design, non-design, yeah.
Well, it's not for design, but my favorite science fiction book of all time, I love reading sci-fi, is Neuromancer. I read that a lot. And then there's the sci-fi book called The 3-Body Problem, which is it was written by Xijin Liu, who is a Chinese author. And it's like an amazing series, and I love it. And then I guess like on the design side, oof, that's a tricky one. I don't have any one in particular that I recommend, but yeah, like I have like a giant library, so it's a little bit difficult to pinpoint. I think On Advertising by Ogilvy is like a classic as well. I really enjoy that book, but I have so many, it's like hard to pick one out. But from my perspective too, I think it's really important for designers to get away from their craft to let their brain rest. So I always encourage people to read things that are not design related, just so that they can rest their brain and then come back with fresh ideas. And also sometimes you can cross-pollinate your creativity with things that are not specifically in your field, but you get inspired by something else that you bring into your work. And one of my favorite reads recently was called Smart Brevity. And it's a book that's written on how to communicate and how to shorten your communication, so you put the most relevant communications first. And I think when you live in a remote environment, you work in a remote environment, communication is key. So
nice. Okay, so this question is always tricky. So if you were not a designer, I know you were born with a laptop in your hands, right? Just curious, how the blue you found yourself in a different universe? What profession would you have been instead of being a designer?
I love writing and copy almost as much as I love designing. So I could see myself working in an ad agency or even like as a screenwriter, because I absolutely love copywriting.
What about if there's no tech at all? Just like, let's...
Oh, you want to go there? I would be a horse trainer. I'm an equestrian, so I love riding horses. So yeah, I would do something with horses. I would make a product for equestrians, or there'd be some kind of a horse training or something having to do with horses. that's my low tech career backup.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I want to drill into. It's the non-tech of you, right? So everybody knows you're sitting in front of,
Yeah.
That's having a PC in your hands. You're not letting go of the PC, so
Yeah, no, I think for me, when the equestrian fashion is the one I absolutely love. Like I've never ridden. No, that's not true. I've ridden horses before, but like I couldn't handle a horse by myself. Is I guess the thing to say. But when it comes to like the actual dressing up to go horse riding and all of, I love the equestrian fashion so much. So if I was ever to create anything horse related, it would be fashion items.
Well, my life has always been like a tale of two passions. So on one hand, I've got this like tech entrepreneur and design and all, like all the stuff that we just talked about. But then there's this whole other side to me that I rarely ever let out into the world. And it's just like my obsession with horses. I've had it since I was a little kid and I've never grown out of it. My parents said that I would grow out by age 12 and that was absolutely false. So.
Proving them wrong.
Okay, so what's your favorite food and let's combine with movie?
Oh my goodness. My favorite food or my favorite movie. Okay, favorite movie probably like of all time, maybe The Matrix. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that movie and I absolutely love that film. And then my food is like a three-way tie between Italian, Thai food and Japanese food. So
Interesting. I'll suggest you try some Caribbean or African food too.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Spicy though, just a little one.
I love spicy. I love it. Like whenever we go out to eat, I'm like maximum spice, and sometimes I regret it, but not every time.
I'm sure if you try for African ones, you would. And then, right, good. That's really good to meet you. Also. Yeah.
So thank you so much once again, Rebecca, for the wonderful episode. It's been great having you, and from myself and Emmanuel, we'll see you guys next time on the next episode.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.